And welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. 888-589-8840 if you would like to join the conversation. 888-589-8840. We will welcome you to the bridge where you can communicate freely with your loyal, humble, and cheerful first mate. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. I want to talk just for a moment about what's going on with President Obama. We mentioned this yesterday, but President Obama sending Chuck Hagel out there yesterday to talk about downsizing the American military, reducing the size of the American military to its smallest size since prior to World War II, since 1940, and changing the philosophy of the American military from a military that's capable of fighting a ground war on two fronts. That's what we've had to do. We've had to fight a ground war on two fronts since World War II, in the Pacific Theater and in Europe. We had to do that in World War II. We've had to do that in Iraq and Afghanistan. And now President Obama is shrinking the capacity of the military, saying we only need to be prepared to fight one land war at a time. So it's very deliberate. I think the A-10 Warthog is being phased out. You're going to have helicopters that are going to be phased out and downsized. So the overall capacity of the military to do its job is going to be radically reduced. And here is Dick Cheney, clip number 1, Rob, if we can grab that. Dick Cheney, former vice president and man who's very strong in national defense, talking about how inexcusable what President Obama is doing. I mean, it would be one thing, ladies and gentlemen, if the world was a more peaceful, stable place, but it clearly is not. And if the number of threats to our safety and security were being reduced by the day, that would be fine. Maybe you could see it, but the threats are not being reduced. And the number one job of our military is to protect our national security. And here's what Dick Cheney had to say yesterday to Sean Hannity about Obama's downsizing, diminishing of the military.
The other thing I know for a fact, too, Sean, from keeping in touch with some of my old friends that I used to deal with in the Middle East, they no longer have any confidence at all in American security guarantees. They're absolutely convinced that they can no longer trust the United States to keep its commitments. That includes Israelis, Saudis, and a lot of others in that part of the world. They peddle this line that now we're going to pivot to Asia, but they've never justified it. And I think the whole thing is not driven by any change in world circumstances. It's driven by budget considerations. He'd much rather spend the money on food stamps than he would on a strong military or support for our troops.
So I'd love to have you weigh in on that, what President Obama is doing to our military. I know our listening audience is as supportive of the military as any listening audience in America, and love to get your take on what President Obama is doing to our military. You heard Dick Cheney saying quite forthrightly he'd rather spend the money on food stamps than on a strong military or support for our troops. So for President Obama, his priority is welfare programs. He measures the success of government by how many people cannot live without it, how many people are dependent upon it. We measure success by the number of people that do not need government assistance, who are self-reliant, who are independent, who are caring for themselves. That's success. That's an American value. Government dependence is not a classic American value. Independence, self-reliance, that's an American value. That's how we measure success, but not how our president measures it. Now, Mark Levin, clip number 2, had this to say about President Obama and the shift in his focus and his allegiance. And this brings up the issue of President Obama's affinity for the religion of Islam. Now, I'm not saying that he's a Muslim. A lot of people think he is. I've had people insider circles in D.C. tell me everybody in D.C. thinks he's a closet Muslim. But regardless of whether he is or not, he is clearly more sympathetic to Islam than he is to Christianity, and he is far more sympathetic to Islamic nations than he is to the nation of Israel. He's got members of the Muslim Brotherhood that have infiltrated his administration. He's got people that are connected to terror that are now director of the National Security Council. So here is Mark Levin waxing eloquent on President Obama's pro-Muslim sympathies.
This administration is a pro-Muslim Brotherhood administration. That's right, I said it. And I know I'm going to be attacked. I always am for saying it. But it doesn't matter. They supported the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Muslim Brotherhood types have been in the Oval Office. Why are we kidding ourselves? Some joke? The ambassador to the UN, our ambassador to the UN, tweets out something like this, cold-blooded crap like this. Let's face it, they hate Israel, and they like Jews who contribute to their campaigns and vote for their president and so forth, but that's it.
So that's Mark Levin saying, look, we've got an administration that supports the the Muslim Brotherhood. It is pro-Muslim Brotherhood. And remember that the Muslim Brotherhood is dedicated to the extermination, the elimination of Western civilization. They have said that flatly. That's their goal, a memo from 1991. That's what we're doing in North America. We want to eliminate and destroy Western civilization by sabotaging its miserable house from within. They are on a search and destroy to undermine, sabotage Western civilization, and President Obama is playing along with them, cooperating with them, enabling them. And, you know, Mark Levin makes the point that he supported the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. He's supported them in Libya, supported them in Syria. Everywhere that President Obama's imprint has gone, he's used it to support the Muslim Brotherhood with its designs to destroy the West, which is really, in effect, a betrayal of American interests. So I'd like to know what you think about that. He says, look, this administration hates Israel. I do not think that's an exaggeration. The only Jews they like are the ones that contribute to their campaigns and vote for their president and so forth, but that is as far as their affinity for the Jewish people go. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's take a call from Don in Milan, Illinois, or Milan, Illinois. Don, is it Milan or Milan?
Milan.
Milan. All right, Don, go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Okay, well, first I have a question. Everybody keeps saying that Jan Brewer is going to veto the bill. Well, I've thought, when I've studied, when you veto, that means no. If you sign it, you sign it.
Mm-hmm.
So is she going to sign it or is she going to veto it?
Well, and that's the question. You know, what I'm reading is that she's probably going to veto it, which I guess you stamp it. You don't sign anything. I think you have some kind of big giant stamp with the word veto on it, and then you stamp the legislation in bright red ink with a veto. And I'd be surprised if she didn't do it because there's so much pressure. If she folds on this, it'll be another victory for the bullies and bigots of Big Gay. Anyway, Don, go ahead.
And I've been listening to this stuff on the military for the last 3 or 4 days, and it's really making me upset because my family has served in the military since we became legal citizens back in 1847 during the famine. And like the Warthog, that is a great tank killer. It was proven in Iraq. And are they going to cut down on the Apaches too? Because you said helicopters, but they haven't said anything else. I haven't heard anybody say anything.
Yeah, I've got an article here, Dan. Let me see if I can grab it. Some of the changes that are being proposed. For one thing, Hagel said quite explicitly, this reduced force would be capable of decisively defeating aggression in one major combat theater. So we wind up being engaged in 2 different major combat theaters. I mean, Hagel is admitting we can't do it. We can't handle that.
Well, yeah,
Now, here's what else. The U-2 spy plane would be abandoned in favor of drones. The A-10 Warthogs, an entire class of Air Force attack jets, is facing the chopping block and would be replaced by F-35s. And they talk about kind of the reassignment of helicopters down here. Let's see. Training helicopters would be retired. The National Guard would give its more weaponized Apache helicopters to the Army in exchange for Blackhawks, better suited for disaster response, other peacetime activities. So there'd be some swapping of helicopters between the military and the National Guard.
Okay, so they're not getting rid of the Apache.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Just reassigning it.
Or the Comanche. The Comanche's a better helicopter, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I don't understand people. They just don't see this. And I'm totally blind. I can see it from a mile away. Barack Hussein Obama, that is a Muslim name. That's not a Christian name. I don't know why people cannot get that.
Well, that's how he took his oath of office. He didn't use his middle initial. I mean, he said, I, Barack Hussein Obama. He made a point of mentioning his middle name. And by the way, Dan, looking at a latest polling data from Gallup, Americans now are kind of recognizing what you and I are talking about, Don, the weakening by this president of America abroad. When he began his administration in 2009, 67% of the American people believed that countries around the world had respect for our commander-in-chief. That number has now dropped to 41%, from 67% to 41%. 53% of the American people know the truth that other countries around the world do not have respect for our president. All right, Don, listen, I appreciate the call. Thank you. Let's grab a call from Susan, Mobile, Alabama. Susan, what's on your mind? Welcome.
Hey, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the president dumbing down our armed forces.
Yes.
This is going to sound crazy, but I fully believe that it is his entire program to hand this nation over to the Muslims. The problem that he's not considering is when he's accomplished that, they will no longer need him. He believes in abortion, and he believes in the homosexual agenda. They will take him out.
Well, and they, we don't believe that homosexuals ought to be taken out and hung in the public square, but Muslim nations do, and they're doing it. We want homosexuals to be helped. We don't want them to be harmed. We don't want them to be hanged. That's what Muslims want. That's what the Islamic religion wants. We want them to get help, like we'd want a drug abuser to get help. All right, Susan, listen, I appreciate the call, and if that was President Obama's intention, I'm not saying that's what he's doing, Susan, but if that's what he intended to do, is to hand over the United States as a gift to the Islamic world, this is just about exactly how you would go about doing it. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be back after the news. Don't go anywhere.